Joe. Good morning, sir. Legal analyst and former U.S. attorney. Nice to have you.
Good morning.
Okay, so.
He's very calm.
I know, it's the calm before the storm. The IG report comes out yesterday. Is this worse than you thought, or is exactly as expected?
Oh, I think this is extremely disappointing. It has a sense of cognitive dissonance about it. It doesn't make any sense based on the facts that were known and the new facts that come out of it that are now known. I must say that I thought the reaction of Trey Gowdy, who was alarmed, angry, and disappointed, he deserves what he got based on his view recently that the Bureau did everything by the book concerning the informant that was put into the Trump presidential campaign. I think that the IG is either very naive or just didn't want to go the distance. The notion that there was no political bias shown either by Comey or whoever else he might have felt that way about is simply ludicrous. And I think that what we've seen, I will say this about the report, the line that was taken out of the material that was shown to Congress and then showed up in the report where I guess it's Strzok who says we'll stop him, meaning Trump. I don't know what the members of Congress thought was going to happen when they're not being shown basic documents. So my view of this is it's almost a nothing burger as far as I'm concerned, because what matters now is if the Congress continues to be ridden roughshod over by the Bureau and Rod Rosenstein, it won't make any difference how angry they get. And I'll say this, that Chris Wray news conference yesterday was a Monty Python joke. Here he is standing up. He's the worst political, embarrassing situation in history. And Chris Wray is going to give training. Well, guess what? The training that's needed is for the people at the upper echelon, not the people out in the field. I mean, that was an embarrassing performance by Chris Wray. There's a guy who's running the greatest law enforcement agency in the world, and he has no command presence. So all in all, yesterday was an awful day for people who care about good government, whether it was Horowitz's naive report or Chris Wray's embarrassing performance. It was an ugly day for people that believe in good government and good law enforcement.
You know, Joe, I'm sitting here going through the papers trying to find it because I have so much on this report. But correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure, wasn't President Obama's name redacted from this report and put in instead as a senior official?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Why redact his name if everybody knows who it was?
Well, why redact lawyer number two?
Mm-hmm. Right.
This lawyer that made some awful remarks. Why isn't he named? These are public officials. We pay their salaries. Why aren't they named? This is absolutely absurd. But see, this is what happens when you don't do oversight correctly and you just don't know how to fight. I give Nunes an A+. I give the rest of them up there D- at best.
You know, one of the things that has really stuck out to me is the relationship between FBI officials and reporters. Dozens of FBI officials, unnamed in this, but are said to have received bribes from reporters in the forms of sport tickets, dinners, access to non-public events, and in return have maintained constant communications despite not being authorized in any way to communicate with the press. The IG saying this has made it very difficult to establish who was the specific person behind a variety of leaks at the FBI. The culture there on that leak question seems like it's in trouble.
Well, I think the Bureau will never be able to fix this as long as you have people like Chris Wray at the helm. This is not a manager. This is not a guy who understands what the stakes are. When you get up and you give a news conference like that, which was a total embarrassment for the director of the FBI, what you're doing is you're sending a signal to the troops that you're not serious. And I can only say that whatever their problems are with their relationships with reporters, that is not going to change. Chris Wray didn't say anything about that during his news conference. He didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Joe, were you shocked by some of the language that came out of this? One of the employees writing, Trump supporters are all poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy POS that think he will magically grant them jobs for doing nothing. They probably didn't watch the debates. They aren't fully educated on his policies and are stupidly wrapped up in his unmerited enthusiasm. And also, another one went on to use the word to call Ohio voters, quote unquote, retarded. Is this the way that people speak in the FBI about American citizens?
It never used to be that way when I was a federal prosecutor and U.S. attorney. I am absolutely shocked by the language of these people. You didn't hear Chris Wray say a word about it yesterday. He doesn't understand how serious this situation is. And this nonsense about training people. Good Lord, it sounds like the former CEO of Starbucks, for God's sakes. You're not running a coffee shop here, Chris. You're running the world's premier law enforcement agency. What that shows, that language, Mary, that you referred to, shows an incredible lack of discipline inside the Bureau, no management, but even worse, a tolerance by management of attitudes like that. I hope that when the Mueller investigation is over, the President of the United States, and I intend to talk to him about this eventually, not while North Korea is going on and all that stuff. I think Chris Wray has to go. I think Rosenstein has to go. I think Rosenstein clearly has a conflict of interest in so many areas which he refuses to recognize. I just think a bunch of people have to go. These problems are never going to get any better as long as people like Chris Wray and Rod Rosenstein are in charge.
All right, well, we have much more with Joe diGenova. I want to ask him about the way the Hillary Clinton investigation was actually conducted, and also about Bob Mueller's investigation, how it is impacted by this IG report. A lot more ahead with Joe diGenova. Stay tuned for that. Talking to Joe diGenova, legal analyst and former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia. Always nice to talk to Joe. And he's reacting to this Inspector General report that came out yesterday. Joe, there's another unnamed FBI attorney who worked on the Russia investigation, the special counsel's Russia investigation, that is Bob Mueller, who was talking about resisting Donald Trump, writing in a text message, Viva la resistance, and saying that he wanted to resist the president. He, too, was removed from the Mueller investigation for his anti-Trump animus. This is now the second person that we've found out who's been removed of this nature. Something's wrong in the Mueller investigation.
Well, Bob Mueller made a terrible mistake. He hired poorly and staffed up in an extremely naive way. And only someone who is as arrogant as they can possibly be can believe that you can hire these types of people and not have it affect the investigation. I have absolutely no confidence that professional judgments are being made by the Mueller team. Bob Mueller has become a legal irrelevancy in the investigation since I don't believe he's actually running the show. It's clear that he's disengaged and really may not be capable of doing what needs to be done. But it's just shocking, and the lack of interest in this by the Democrats on the Hill, who always pretend to be so concerned about the values of public administration, says volumes about where the Democratic Party is today.
Joe, I want to talk to you about something else, not getting a lot of play here. Former Assistant Attorney General Peter Kadzik, we now know, tried to get his son a job with the Hillary Clinton campaign while he was working on the investigation into that use of the private email server. We also know that the same guy gave a heads up to John Podesta, who was the Clinton campaign chair, warning him that the release of Clinton's emails was imminent, and all we get out of this is he showed poor judgment. Didn't he commit a crime here by giving a heads up to Podesta?
It is possible that there was activity that went over the edge. I think what the almost benign criticism of Peter Kadzik shows that the Inspector General didn't want to pull the trigger. He didn't want to go with higher-ups and say really bad things about them. And I find that extremely disappointing. I expected more from Michael Horowitz, and as far as I'm concerned, we didn't get it. And I am very, very disappointed in the tone and everything. This is not about trying to help people and not hurt them. This is about accountability in one of the most important investigations ever. And it just shows how totally politically corrupt the Obama Justice Department and FBI were. And unfortunately, they still remain that way, even under the stewardship of Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein.
You know, Joe, I'm really struck by the Hillary Clinton investigation, and I've been thinking a lot about how it relates to the Mike Flynn investigation. Mike Flynn sits down with some FBI agents, isn't even aware that he's being investigated, answers some questions, and is believed to be truthful by the people who are speaking to him. And then Hillary Clinton, let's talk about that. The IG report comes out, and we find out that the Inspector General thinks it's unusual, of course, that she had her lawyers present who happened to be fact witnesses in the very same case, that the way they were treated. And you also have the FBI agents who are interviewing Hillary Clinton who are stunned to find out that she has no idea how to handle classified information, that she seems completely clueless in their interview about classified information being in her email. This seems totally out of whack.
Well, it is. And you have to ask yourself, if she had such ignorance, that would go to intent, to not caring, to not wanting to know, to not learning, to basically ignoring all your briefings that you were given. I actually think she was faking it when she gave those answers. I think she was trying to look like she was just somebody who didn't quite get it. That, of course, is impossible to believe that she could have ever actually been that way. But I think what you've seen here in all of these instances that you've described is a totally politically corrupt DOJ and FBI under President Obama. No matter what anybody wants to say, Barack Obama ruined a lot of things in government when he was president, but the two places he really hurt were the FBI and the Department of Justice.
You know, we know, though, that Hillary and Huma Abedin skipped the ethics training. So they didn't get security briefings. They chose not to attend those mandatory classes or briefings. They chose not to, which was brilliant because it gives her the way to say now, and it's totally acceptable. I didn't know. Well, she didn't know because she didn't go to the training.
Didn't Hillary skip signing documents related to whether or not she understood the security clearance process?
Yep, she did.
Yes, and in fact, that is evidence of intent to ignore the legal requirements. As I said, there are now so many double standards at work in these cases that I don't know how the FBI and the DOJ reform themselves with the people who are currently in charge. None of these people is a leader. They are awful at their jobs. They have no command presence, and it's pretty clear to me that I think Wray and Rosenstein are fundamentally dishonest people.
No, absolutely, and the fact that this whole bias thing, that there was bias, but it really didn't affect the way they did their job. I just think that's a tough one for the American people.
It affected every fiber of every part of these investigations. That conclusion is just it's an insult to the American people.
Exactly. The American people see through this, and they're not going to buy this. And you know what? Hey, maybe they just got Trump reelected.
That's right. All right.
That's exactly what came out of this. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Rest up this weekend. We need you back Monday.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Joe.